Hello dear students, I Sana Asif, Assistant Professor of English at Bhopal School of Social Sciences. So in previous lecture, as we have done prose and its forms, so today I'll be explaining you history of prose. So today I'll explain you 15th century prose. And in the further lectures, I'll explain you the Victorian prose and the Romantic prose also. So today it's 15th century prose. So what exactly the 15th century prose is? The 15th century is comparatively barren and non-productive in the field of English literature. During this time, little poetry of quality was written. The English and Scottish poets were very poor imitators of Chaucer, both in the command of subject matter and versification, but the prose literature of this age recorded considerable progress. Unlike the poetry of this age, prose suffered from number of retrogression. There was a perceptible increase in skill due to increased practice. There was a growing perception of the beauties of rhythm, and there was the development of various prose styles, including the ornate and the plain. So there was the development of different prose style, which includes ornate and plain. The English prose certainly moved forward during the 15th century to a richness that was unknown to this age. During the 15th century, prose made some remarkable progress because the Englishmen shaped the rough material of their native tongue to form a literature for providing instructions and entertainment. So the English prose certainly moved forward during the 15th century to a richness that was unknown to this age. During the 15th century, prose made some remarkable progress because the Englishmen shaped the rough material of their native tongue to form a literature for providing instructions and entertainment. But still, English prose of the 15th century amounts for little originality and artistic value. The slow progress of prose on national lines was due to the influence that Latin exercised on the minds of the prose writers of this age. They were fascinated by Latin constructions. They were also contented to be the translators of French works of repute. Prose in the century was developed much on the trial and error basis. So it was developed much on trial and error basis. The promising prose writers of the century sought to impart directness, vigor, and simplicity. It was due to their efforts that the prose of the age developed, and various kinds of prose works were written. It is interesting to observe that English prose writers attempted different kinds of prose during this period. Fisher and Cranmer popularized theological writers, and historical prose was presented in the Chronicle of England by Capgrave, who wrote in a business-like fashion. Philosophical prose appeared in the Governors of England by Fortescue. So by Fortescue. Eliot popularized educational prose and prepared the way for medical prose in the Castle of Health. William Tyndale's translation of the Bible is highly praiseworthy. The English prose of the 15th century was cultivated and promoted by the following writers. So here are the following writers. First is Reginald Peacock, then the second is Sir John Fortescue, third one John Fisher, fourth Hugh Latimer, fifth Sir Thomas More, sixth Sir Thomas Malory. So I'll explain you about Reginald Peacock. Reginald Peacock was born in the year 1392 and died in the year 1461. Is one of the important prose writers of the 15th century. Peacock's prose, often rugged and obscure, is marked by his preference for English words over Latin. His two works were The Repressor of Overmuch Blaming of the Clergy and The Book of Faith. His books were among the earliest of English controversial works, and they mark a victory over the once all-important Latin. Now comes Sir John Fortescue, who was born in the year 1394 and died in the year 1476. He was an important prose writer who made some contributions in the development of 15th century English prose. In contrast to Peacock, he stands for clarity of ideas. Fortescue avoided Peacock's pattern of long complicated sentences. H.S. Bennet in his Chaucer and the 15th century writes. What does this 15th century writes? In common with other 15th century writers, Fortescue is not capable of writing a highly complex prose. Straightforwardness, simplicity, and clear thinking could accomplish may be seen in almost every pages of the Governs of England. Next is John Fisher, who was born in the year 1459 and died in 1535. John Fisher, a religious divine and the Bishop of Rochester, opposed Henry VIII during Reformation, was imprisoned and finally beheaded. He wrote much in Latin and in English, and he is represented by a small collection of tracts and sermons and a longer treatise on the Psalms. Though they are of no great quantity, his prose works are in the nature of much importance. They are the first of the rhetorical religious books that for several centuries were to be an outstanding feature of English prose. In addition, they mark a distinctive step ahead in the evolution of English prose style. They are written in the style of a narrator, the searching after the appropriate word, the frequent use of rhetorical figures of speech, and a rapid and following rhythm. In the style of Fisher, we can observe the beginning of an ornate style. Fisher proved to be the direct ancestor of the prose style of the great 17th century prose writer Jeremy Taylor. Now comes Hugh Latimer, who was born in the year 1485 and died in the year 1555. Hugh Latimer is another prose writer of the 15th century who was published by Henry VIII because of resistance against some of his reforms. Latimer's prose work consists of 2 volumes of sermons published in 1549. Hugh Latimer works are remarkable for their plain and dogmatic exposition, their graphical power, and their homely appeal. He is first among the writers of plain style. So next is Sir Thomas More, who was born in the year 1478 and died in the year 1535. Sir Thomas More is much known for his Latin works owing to their elegance and wit. This includes Utopia, which presents the picture of an imaginative ideal state based on the socialistic pattern. So Thomas More English prose works include The Life of John Pickus, The History of Richard III, and a number of tracts and letters. He is the first writer of the middle style. Now comes the last one, that is Sir Thomas Malory, who died in the year 1471. Sir Thomas Malory was well known for his romance. The famous Arthurian legends were joined to a great prose romance written with a uniform dignity. It is a skillful blend of dialogues and narrative, full of color and life. Sir Thomas Malory's style has a transparent clarity and is poetic, making Malory the first great prose stylist. Few writers of the century had been more successful than Malory in the use of dialogue and narrative. His dialogues is singularly terse and direct, so that Malory's prose is as capable of irony as Chaucer's verse. So today, as we have covered 15th century prose, it was a history of prose. In the next lecture, I'll be coming up with 16th century prose. Thank you. Have a great day ahead.